When I first married Michael, he was 30, confident, and full of energy. Back then, everything felt like an adventure. We traveled, we laughed endlessly, and we promised each other that marriage wouldn't dull the spark between us. But as years passed, life grew heavy with responsibilities. Jobs, bills, kids, family commitments, they took their toll. By the time Michael turned 55, we were living in routine. We weren't unhappy, but the excitement, the surprises, the adventures, they seemed like something from our youth. I thought maybe that was just how marriage worked. You settle, you age, you learn to be content. But then Michael proved me completely wrong. It started with my 47th birthday. Honestly, I didn't expect much. Maybe dinner, maybe flowers. But when the day came, Michael didn't say a word in the morning. I was crushed. I went through the day thinking he'd forgotten. After dinner, I even retreated to our bedroom, fighting tears. Then, at 8 o'clock sharp, I heard music playing in the living room. When I walked out, I gasped. Michael had decorated the house with fairy lights and candles. On the table sat a homemade cake, lopsided, a little burnt, but beautiful to me. Next to it was a scrapbook he had secretly been working on for weeks, filled with photos from our entire life together. "I didn't forget," he said softly. "I just wanted to surprise you." I cried. Not because of the gift, but because I realized my husband was still capable of grand, thoughtful gestures. A few weeks later, he suggested something even more surprising. "Let's go hiking," he said one Saturday morning. I blinked. "Hiking? You haven't hiked in years." He grinned. "Exactly. It's time we start again." So off we went, driving into the mountains just outside Portland. The trail wasn't easy, and at first, I worried it would be too much for him. But Michael surprised me. He kept pace, cracking jokes, pointing out wildflowers, encouraging me when I felt tired. When we reached the top, overlooking a breathtaking valley, he pulled out a thermos of coffee and 2 mugs. "To us," he said. "Still climbing after all these years." And for the first time in ages, I felt like we were 20 again, full of wonder, full of joy. But he didn't stop there. One Friday evening, Michael came home and said, "Put on something nice. We're going out." "Where?" I asked. "You'll see." He drove us downtown, and we ended up at a dance studio. A dance class. I laughed. "Michael, you hate dancing." "Maybe I used to," he said. "But I want to try again. With you." The class was clumsy and hilarious. We stepped on each other's toes, spun the wrong way, and laughed until our sides hurt. But somewhere between the awkward turns and the offbeat twirls, I saw a new side of him. Playful, fearless, willing to make a fool of himself just to make me smile. It wasn't just big things, though. Michael surprised me in quiet, everyday ways too. He started leaving little notes around the house. Tucked into my book, taped to the bathroom mirror, slipped into my coat pocket. Notes that said things like "still in love with you," or "you make me proud every day." He started cooking Sunday breakfast, experimenting with pancakes shaped like hearts or stars. He even learned how to use Spotify, so he could make playlists of songs from our past. One night, we danced in the kitchen to the same tune that played at our wedding. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't fancy. But it was real. Life wasn't suddenly a fairy tale. Michael's job still stressed him out. Bills still piled up. We still had disagreements about silly things like laundry or schedules. But the difference was, he didn't retreat into routine anymore. He made an effort to keep surprising me, to keep showing me that age didn't mean the end of romance. And I learned to surprise him, too. I joined him on bike rides, planned little getaways, even signed us up for a pottery class just for fun. It felt like we were rediscovering each other all over again. On our 25th wedding anniversary, Michael went all out. He told me to pack a bag but wouldn't say where we were going. We drove for hours until we reached the coast, the same beach where he'd first asked me to be his girlfriend. There, waiting in the sand, was a small picnic he had arranged with candles, blankets, and all my favorite foods. "Do you remember this place?" he asked. "Of course," I whispered. He smiled. "I wanted to bring us back to the beginning. To remind you. I'd choose you all over again." That night, as we sat watching the waves, I realized something profound. I used to believe that love faded with time. that surprises and adventures were for the young, that marriage inevitably dulled into routine. But Michael showed me that wasn't true. Love doesn't fade, it just changes shape. And if you're brave enough to nurture it, it can surprise you even decades later. Now, whenever friends ask me about marriage, I tell them this. Don't assume the spark dies with age. Don't assume your partner can't surprise you. Because at 55, my husband proved me wrong. He became more thoughtful, more adventurous, more alive than I'd ever expected. And in turn, he made me feel alive too. Life with Michael wasn't about fancy gifts or perfect plans. It was about the scrapbook he made by hand, the hikes we stumbled through, the dance steps we messed up, the small notes that reminded me I was loved. At 55, he reminded me that marriage doesn't have to grow stale. It can grow deeper, richer, more surprising. And that, I realized, was the greatest gift of all.